The first time I ever saw my dad cry was the day we sold his fishing boat. I was 12, and he'd just gotten off the phone with the bank. I was too young to understand it all, but I remember the silence in the kitchen, the kind that sits on your chest. He didn't say a word, just walked outside and sat on the porch with his head in his hands. The boat was old, barely floated, but it was his escape. Every Saturday morning, rain or shine, he'd take it out onto the lake and come back smelling like fish and diesel, looking 10 years younger. Losing it wasn't just about money. It was about dignity. That image stuck with me. My name's Tyler. I'm 34 now, and I live about 2 hours from where I grew up. Tech money. I was lucky, or maybe just obsessed enough to make it out of our tiny town and land a job in a startup that actually took off. Sold my shares 3 years ago. Since then, I've been trying to do right by the people who raised me, especially after all the sacrifices they made. My parents are quiet types. They don't complain. Don't ask for much. They never got to travel, never renovated the kitchen, never took a proper vacation. But they always made sure I had shoes that fit and food on the table. My mom used to cut coupons like it was a second job. My dad worked double shifts at the mill for decades. They didn't just raise me, they built me. Now here's where things get tricky. I have a younger sister named Emily. She's 31 and married to a guy named Brent, who I'll admit I never liked. Something about him always rubbed me the wrong way. He's one of those guys who wears sunglasses indoors and calls waiters boss. Always talking about networking and passive income, but somehow never has a job longer than 6 months. Emily's, well, she's complicated. Growing up, we were close, but things shifted after college. She got married fast, had 2 kids, and fell into this weird rhythm of trying to one-up everyone while pretending she wasn't. She's got a talent for backhanded compliments. Wow, Tyler, must be nice to have time to work out. I wish I didn't have to worry about the kids every second. That kind of thing. I shrugged it off most of the time. Family, right? You pick your battles. But when I told her I was buying a lake house for mom and dad, I could feel the judgment through the phone. Oh, she said, dragging the word out like she didn't know what to do with it. That's generous. I just hope they're up for that kind of responsibility. I didn't respond. She always had a way of making kindness feel like guilt. The lake house meant something. Not just for me, but for my parents. It was symbolic. The same lake where Dad used to take me fishing. The same water my mom would stare at during our Sunday drives, whispering how peaceful it looked. I'd been scouting properties in secret for almost a year, and when I found the right one, 2 bedrooms, wraparound porch, private dock, I didn't hesitate. It cost me $500,000, and every penny felt worth it. The place wasn't massive, but it was perfect. A quiet sanctuary where they could finally relax. I kept it a surprise. Closed the deal, signed the papers, and planned the reveal for their anniversary weekend. I told them we were meeting up at a new Airbnb I'd rented for a little family getaway. Just me, them, and Emily's crew. I thought it might be a chance to reconnect. We hadn't all been together in months. My parents were touched, of course. Mom packed her homemade cinnamon rolls, and Dad even dug out his old tackle box, even though he hadn't fished in years. Emily said she and Brent would drive up the morning of. No problem. The day arrived, cool and golden with early autumn. I showed up an hour early to stock the fridge and set everything up. My heart was pounding the whole time, half excitement, half nerves. I parked their favorite rocking chairs on the porch, framed some old photos I found in their attic, and left a neatly wrapped box on the dining table. Inside was the deed. Signed, sealed, and with a ribbon around it. Then I heard shouting. Not casual, not playful. Angry. Raw. I stepped outside and saw a mess of luggage on the ground. My parents' suitcases. My dad's duffel bag. My mom's flowered weekend tote. All dumped like trash on the gravel drive. Brent was standing there, red in the face, waving his arms. I don't care what they thought, he yelled. This place is not for them. They'll ruin it. They're too old to keep up with anything. And I'm not going to babysit them while they trip over stairs or forget where the dishes go. I froze. My mom was clutching her purse like a lifeline, her face pale and stunned. My dad stood beside her, silent, jaw tight. Emily was nearby, arms folded, not saying a word, just smirking. I walked forward slowly, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. What's going on? I asked, voice low. Brent turned, startled. Tyler, look, man, I'm just trying to be real here. Your parents are great and all, but come on. They don't need to be here. We drove 2 hours for a family trip, not to be their nurses. I looked at him, Then at Emily, who still hadn't spoken. This house belongs to. He cut me off. Exactly. You said it was an Airbnb. And we all assumed it'd be a break for us. The kids are exhausted, Em's been stressed, and now we have to deal with them too? It's not fair. Emily finally chimed in, voice syrupy sweet. They probably misunderstood. I mean, this place does look like it's meant for people who know how to take care of a home. No offense, but Dad hasn't exactly been in peak shape lately, right? My dad looked down. My mom took a step back. And that was when I realized something ugly. This wasn't just Brent being an idiot. This was planned. Calculated. They thought they were claiming the house for themselves. Maybe assumed it was some new vacation spot I'd bought for the family. Maybe they saw the driveway, the porch, the view, and decided it was too nice to share. Maybe they assumed my parents didn't deserve it. I took a breath, walked past them, and opened the door. Where are you going? Emily called after me. I didn't answer. I walked inside, took the box with the deed from the table, and walked back out. Brent was mid-rant again when I stepped onto the porch. I mean, are we really doing this? They'll fall in the shower. They'll forget to lock the doors. This place is too much for them. They'll end up costing you more money in repairs and God knows what else. I held up the box. Emily, I said calmly, open this. She looked confused, but took the box. Opened it. Pulled out the paper. Her eyes scanned it. And the smirk disappeared. She blinked. Looked again. Wait, what is this? Brent leaned over her shoulder. What? It's the deed, I said, voice steady. This house belongs to Mom and Dad. I bought it for them. It's theirs. Not yours. Not mine. Theirs. Emily's face drained of color. Brent stepped back like I'd slapped him. My mom gasped softly. My dad looked at me, eyes wide. And that's when everything really began to unravel. Emily stood there with the deed in her hands like it had personally betrayed her. Her mouth opened once, twice, but no sound came out. Brent, meanwhile, stepped away like the paper was radioactive. The silence was deafening. You could hear the wind brushing against the leaves and the faint hum of cicadas starting up from the trees that lined the lake. My mom looked at me wide-eyed. Tyler, you bought this? I nodded slowly. For you. Both of you. This is your home now. No more rent. No more repairs you can't afford. Just peace. My dad's mouth twitched, his jaw tight like he was trying not to show anything, but I saw his eyes shimmer. He reached over and squeezed my shoulder, once, firm and quiet, the way he always did when words weren't enough. But then Emily snapped. You're kidding, right? She said, her voice rising into that sharp register she used when she wanted to sound like she was laughing but really wasn't. You gave them a lake house? A lake house, Tyler? They don't need a lake house. They barely use the TV remote. I turned to her, already feeling the heat crawling up the back of my neck. It's not about what they need. It's what they deserve. Brent scoffed. So what? We're just supposed to drive all the way up here to play nursemaid while they trip over everything? You do realize they're pushing 70. My mom flinched like she'd been slapped. My dad didn't say anything, but I saw his hand curl into a fist behind his back. You don't need to worry about any of that, I said sharply. This isn't your concern. You were invited for a weekend. That's all. Emily threw the deed onto the porch like it burned her. This is ridiculous. You're being irresponsible. You could have put that money into college funds for your niece and nephew. But no, of course not. It's always about making yourself look good. That was her thing. Always trying to twist the knife while pretending it was logic. I'd spent years brushing it off, telling myself she was just stressed or tired or going through something. But right then, I saw it for what it was. Entitlement. Plain and simple. The kind that builds over years and disguises itself as concern. I stared at her. So, this is really about you, isn't it? Emily's face darkened. Excuse me. You're mad because I didn't buy this for you. Because it wasn't about you for once. Brent stepped forward, puffing out his chest like a parrot trying to scare off a predator. Hey man, watch your tone. I didn't flinch. You threw their bags on the ground, Brent. Like garbage. And you yelled at them. That's your tone. The air was thick now, heavy. My mom was trembling. My dad stepped forward like he was about to say something, but stopped himself. Then Emily, in a sudden shift of tone that sent a chill down my spine, smiled. You always did think you were better than the rest of us. Just because you made some money, got out. But you're still just the same little boy who cried when Dad forgot your birthday that one year. I blinked. Where had that come from? The memory hit me like a gut punch. I was maybe 7. My dad had been working double shifts all week and missed dinner. I sat at the table with a tiny chocolate cupcake waiting for hours. I never told him it hurt. I knew he was doing his best. But Emily remembered. She'd remembered, and she pulled it out like a dagger just to twist it. And I realized then that this had never been sibling rivalry. It wasn't playful competition. It was resentment. Deep, long-brewing resentment that she never voiced, but let rot in silence. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just turned and helped my mom pick up her bag from the gravel. She looked at me with eyes full of tears she hadn't let fall. Maybe we should just go back home. This is too much, sweetie. We didn't mean to make things complicated. No, I said, my voice shaking. You're staying. This is your house. And then Brent laughed. Good luck keeping it maintained. You'll be spending another 100 grand in 2 years fixing the roof and mowing the lawn. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt disgust. Good thing that's not your problem, I muttered, then turned back toward the house. I invited my parents in. They hesitated, like they were worried stepping across the threshold would trigger another explosion. But I smiled, tired, tight, and they followed. Inside, everything was still. The lake shimmered through the back windows, reflecting the late afternoon light. I showed them the living room, the kitchen stocked with their favorite snacks, the photos I'd framed on the mantel. My mom stopped in front of one of her and Dad from their honeymoon, black and white, holding hands by a lake much like this one. Her voice cracked. You remembered this. I nodded. I remember everything. And then I heard the door creak open again behind us. Emily stood there, arms crossed, Brent just behind her. So that's it, she said, eyes darting around the living room like she was casing it. You're really going to let them keep this whole place? While we scraped by trying to pay for daycare and groceries. I turned slowly. Do you hear yourself? I'm just saying, if you're really trying to help the family, maybe you should think long-term. Mom and Dad won't be around forever. What happens to the house then? Are you going to put it in your will? Or are we going to pretend you didn't make a huge financial decision without even talking to the rest of us? Brent chimed in. He probably thinks he's above everyone. Watch, 5 years from now, we'll be stuck handling this place when your parents pass, and it's falling apart. My dad stepped forward then. His voice was calm, but it rumbled deep. That's enough. They froze. I've spent my whole life working so my kids could have a better one. I didn't ask for this house, but your brother gave it to us with love. And if you can't respect that, you can get in your car and leave. Emily looked stunned. But Brent? He just grinned. You sure you want to go there, old man? My fists clenched. Brent, I said, leave. Now. This isn't a discussion. He ignored me, walked over to the mantel, picked up one of the picture frames and scoffed. This place is a waste on people who can't even appreciate it. That's when something in me snapped. I stepped forward, grabbed the frame from his hand, and shoved him back, not hard, but enough to make him stumble. You touch anything else in this house, I said through gritted teeth, and you'll wish you hadn't. He raised his hands like he was innocent. Whoa, easy there. Just making a point. Emily grabbed his arm. Let's go, she hissed. Now. They left without another word. But I knew it wasn't over. Not even close. That night, after my parents went to bed, Mom curled up on the sunroom couch with a book, Dad sitting on the dock staring at the water. I sat on the porch in silence. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Emily. You'll regret this. No punctuation. No emoji. Just those 4 words. And for the first time in years, I felt afraid of my own sister. But I also felt something else. Resolve. Because if they wanted a war, they were about to find out just how far I was willing to go to protect the people who raised me. To protect what was theirs. And they had no idea what I had planned next. I didn't respond to Emily's text. I just sat there on that porch, phone in my hand, heart pounding louder than the cicadas chirping in the trees. You'll regret this. For words. But they carried more venom than anything she'd said to my face. And the worst part? I believed her. Not because she was right, but because I knew her. And I knew how deep her resentment ran. She didn't yell or throw tantrums. Emily poisoned things quietly. With whispers. With seeds of doubt. With manipulation that didn't look like manipulation until you were drowning in it. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. My parents settled into the Lakehouse like they were afraid it would disappear if they got too comfortable. My mom kept asking if I was sure, if it wasn't too much. My dad cleaned every corner of the place like he was paying rent with elbow grease. I stayed a while longer, helping set up the Wi-Fi, hanging shelves, even walking with my dad down to the dock to help him cast his line for the first time in years. He didn't catch anything. Didn't matter. He just sat there for hours, sun on his back, fishing pole in hand, and I swear I saw the man I used to know when I was a kid. Not the tired, quiet shell who spent the last decade watching bills pile up and dreams slip away, but a man who still had time. It should have felt like peace. But inside me, a storm was building. When I got home a few days later, I found out just how far Emily had gone. It started with a phone call from my aunt, my mom's sister, who lived in Arizona and barely kept up with the family. She said she heard from Emily that I had tricked my parents into signing over their savings to fund a real estate project, that I was trying to move them out of their house so I could flip it and milk them dry. I almost dropped the phone. Apparently, Emily had gone on a campaign, calling extended family, posting vague comments on Facebook, telling mutual friends I'd manipulated my parents into giving me control of their finances under the guise of buying them something nice. She even implied, without saying it outright, that I'd forged some of the paperwork. It was insidious, clever, not quite libel, but just enough to make people start asking questions. And it worked. Within a week, I'd received 3 messages from old family friends saying they were worried about my parents. Someone even called Adult Protective Services anonymously. A caseworker showed up at the Lakehouse unannounced to do a wellness check. My mom was mortified. My dad almost punched the guy. I drove up the next day to talk to them, but by the time I got there, my mom was already packing. She looked up at me, her face tired in a way I hadn't seen in years. Maybe we should just go back, sweetheart. Maybe this was too much. No, I said, kneeling beside her. You don't run from people like this. You stand. But I could feel it happening. The erosion. The cracks forming in something I thought was solid. I tried to call Emily. She didn't pick up. Brent did. Hey man, he said, sounding far too casual. Heard things got a little tense up there. Shame really. You know, my offer still stands. If you want someone to help manage the place, Emily and I could always. I hung up. And that was when the second punch landed. My company, my old startup where I still held some stock, had a quiet scandal brewing. One of the co-founders got wrapped up in some shady crypto stuff, and even though I'd left 2 years prior, my name was still buried in enough paperwork to make it messy. I lost 2 major consulting clients within a week. Then my bank called about irregular activity on one of my accounts. Turns out someone had submitted a change of address form and rerouted some of my mail, including, apparently, a credit card statement that showed 2 large purchases I didn't recognize, both made in the town where Emily and Brent lived. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew. I confronted her over text. Nothing dramatic. Just one sentence. Return the money, Emily. She didn't reply. Days passed. Then weeks. I started noticing cold shoulders at family events. Cousins who once looked up to me now avoided eye contact. At Thanksgiving, my uncle cornered me in the hallway and asked, quietly, if it was true that I'd pressured your folks into giving you power of attorney. I didn't even respond. I just left. By Christmas, I was barely sleeping. I'd lost 10 pounds. I was living in my apartment like it was a cave. Curtains drawn. Phone on silent. My reputation was in free fall. And worse, my relationship with my parents was starting to strain under the weight of Emily's lies. They didn't believe her, not truly, but they were tired, confused, embarrassed. They asked me things like, maybe if you just talk to her, or maybe you should let her cool off, like we were still 10 years old and fighting over a toy. They didn't see it for what it was. Not yet. And I was done trying to prove I was the good guy. So I hit pause. On everything. I stopped answering calls. I shut down my social media. I ghosted the clients who still wanted to work with me. And for the first time in years, I went still. But in that stillness, something changed. I remembered who I was. Not just the guy who made it out of a dead-end town. Not just the son who wanted to repay his parents. But the builder. The one who didn't wait for people to give him permission. Who saw cracks and filled them. Who took chaos and made systems. I started small. A notebook. A plan. I began tracking every message, every slander, every vague post Emily had made. I pulled public records. I hired a lawyer, not to attack, not yet, but to watch. Quietly, strategically, I checked the deed on the Lakehouse. Untouched. I checked the credit charges. Traced. I started building something else too. A new business. Something lean. Something that didn't rely on reputation. I called in favors, reached out to people outside the family orbit. Slowly, I rebuilt a network. Different circles. People who knew me for my work, not my last name. It wasn't fast. It wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. And with every small win, I felt that old strength return. The one I hadn't felt since my startup days. The hunger. The clarity. The ability to see 5 moves ahead while everyone else was playing checkers. By the time spring arrived, I was back on my feet. Not flashy, but stable, sharp. And I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. Because Emily thought she'd broken me. She thought if she isolated me, turned the family against me, smeared my name just enough to confuse the narrative, I'd give up. Crawl back. Apologize for things I didn't do. She didn't realize she was giving me the perfect alibi to disappear and reemerge smarter, quieter, and far more dangerous than she ever expected. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. For my parents. For the truth. For me. And I knew exactly where to begin. But first, I had to wait. Because some storms don't arrive with thunder. They creep in slowly, with the rising tide. And when they hit, they drown everything that doesn't know how to swim. I've always believed the best revenge doesn't look like revenge at all. It looks like patience. Like quiet success. Like rising above until the people who tried to bury you realize you weren't a seed. You were a storm gathering under their feet. And by the time they notice the clouds, it's already too late. That spring, I went back to the Lakehouse. Not to lick my wounds, not to hide, but to plan. My parents were surprised to see me. My mom rushed to the porch, wiping her hands on a dish towel, looking like she was ready to apologize for something she hadn't done. My dad stepped out from the shed, squinting like he was trying to read my expression before deciding how to greet me. I smiled genuinely. I'm not here to talk about Emily. They relaxed. A little. We had dinner on the porch, steaks, potato salad, corn on the cob. Simple food that tasted like childhood. My dad asked if I was doing okay, and I gave him a half-truth. I'm better. Because I was. Not healed, but no longer bleeding. After dinner, I stayed behind while they went to bed. I sat by the water with a notebook and started sketching out what I'd been building. Not just my new business, a consultancy firm designed for early-stage founders who didn't want to get chewed up by predatory investors, but something bigger. A framework. A map. Because Emily had declared war. And wars aren't won with anger. They're won with strategy. First step? Information. I hired a second lawyer. This one specialized in digital forensics. Within 2 weeks, he confirmed what I suspected. Emily had rerouted some of my mail using a false forwarding form. Brent had used one of my old credit card numbers to buy 2 family vacation packages through a shell booking agency. Both purchases had been made during the exact time Brent had claimed to be job hunting. I froze those accounts. Filed a fraud report. Let the banks do what they do best. Choked slowly. Meanwhile, I reached out to an old college friend named Nadia. She worked in PR crisis management. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I told her what I was dealing with, she didn't hesitate. Want me to bury her? She joked. Not yet, I said. Just get me the shovel. She laughed. But 2 days later, she sent me a folder, digital breadcrumbs. Emily's public posts, private comments leaked from mutual friends, and even a few voicemails from a cousin she'd tried to recruit into her little smear campaign. It was all there. The narrative she'd tried to spin was pathetic. She'd leaned hard into the manipulative tech bro angle. Claimed I was using our parents to launder money. That I was planning to flip the Lakehouse and dump them in a retirement home the moment they got comfortable. She never said it outright, but she didn't have to. The insinuations did the work for her. But here's the thing about people like Emily. They think if they drip poison slowly enough, no one will notice the waters turning black. So I let her keep pouring. While I built the cup that would catch every drop, I started reconnecting with family members she'd turned. Casually. Organically. A check-in here, a comment there. I didn't push my side of the story. I just asked how they were doing. Showed up without bitterness. Reminded them who I was without saying it. And slowly, I felt it shift. I caught my uncle watching me more closely at a family barbecue. Saw a few cousins start liking my posts again. Heard from my aunt in Arizona that Emily had gotten quiet lately. She could feel it too. Control slipping. Narrative cracking. And then the opportunity arrived. Brent's birthday. They threw a party. Big venue. Rented space. Lots of people. Emily made a Facebook post about it with one of those overly filtered couple photos where they both looked like wax statues. The caption was pure syrup. celebrating my amazing husband who works so hard and deserves the world red heart, hashtag power couple, hashtag family first. I read it twice and laughed. Because I had something they didn't know. Brent hadn't been working. Not for months. He'd been on unemployment while telling everyone he was building a portfolio. Worse, he'd applied for a small business loan using fake tax documents and been denied for suspected fraud. The paperwork was public. I had it. And I had a friend, let's call him Jay, who worked for a mid-sized business podcast. Jay owed me a favor. I pitched him a story, the rise of financial fakes, how online hustle culture is fueling everyday fraud. He loved it. I sent him everything, redacted, anonymous, of course. The episode dropped a week after Brent's birthday bash. It didn't mention names, but the quotes, the timeline, the details. Anyone who knew them could put two and two together. The internet did the rest. Within days, the comment section on Emily's latest Instagram post turned ugly. Someone posted a link to the podcast. Someone else pointed out the matching timeline. A third dropped a screenshot of a now-deleted tweet Brent had posted months ago bragging about a six-figure investment from a client he never named. Emily panicked. I knew because she called my mom crying. Claimed people were spreading lies about Brent. That someone was trying to ruin their reputation. My mom didn't say much, just passed the phone to me. I picked up. Hi, I said. There was silence on the other end. Then, I know this was you. I didn't deny it. You started this, I said calmly. All I did was make sure people saw who you are. She tried to pivot. This is your family. You're tearing it apart. No, I said. You did that when you threw their bags in the driveway and told them they didn't belong. Silence again. Then she hung up. And that should have been enough. But I wasn't done. Because she still hadn't learned. So I waited 2 more weeks. Let the podcast episode simmer. Let the gossip spread through the town. Brent's reputation tanked so hard he deleted his LinkedIn. Emily locked her accounts. They tried to ride it out, but you can't hide from 1,000 tiny truths once they start crawling out of the cracks. And then I made my move. Remember the vacation packages Brent bought with my credit card? Turns out they were refundable. I called the travel agency, provided the fraud report and my attorney's statement. They refunded the full amount. But instead of returning it to me, I had them issue a credit in Emily's name. Then I sent her a physical voucher in the mail. No note. No explanation. Just a typed message. Enjoy the trip. You'll need the break. Sincerely, the guy who's not done yet. The last time I saw Brent in person, he was sitting outside a strip mall vape shop, hunched over a phone that he kept angrily tapping like it had personally betrayed him. It was late July. The kind of summer heat that sticks to your skin and peels patience off in layers. I didn't speak to him. I just watched for a moment, unseen from my parked car across the street, and thought about how far he'd fallen since the last time he tried to throw my parents' suitcases in the gravel. Back then, he was smug, polished, always dressed in those tight-buttoned shirts and flashy watches he couldn't afford, writing high-off Instagram quotes about hustle and grind. Now, he looked like a man holding together the last threads of a story no one believed anymore. But this isn't about Brent. It's about how the truth, when handled right, doesn't just come out. It erupts. And when it does, it takes down everything built on lies. The final piece of my plan started with a wedding. Not Emily's. Our cousin Rebecca's. She was getting married that August, and the entire extended family had been invited. It was going to be big, outdoor venue, string lights, fancy catering, the works. At first, I wasn't planning to go. But then Rebecca texted me. You have to come. I'm seating you at the same table as Emily. Bring popcorn. I smiled. I hadn't spoken to Emily since the travel voucher. She never acknowledged it, never reached out. But I knew she got it. Just like I knew she'd been unraveling ever since. Brent's failed business loans were now public knowledge. Rumors swirled that they'd taken out a second mortgage on their house. Several family members had quietly cut contact. Even some of Emily's old high school friends had started avoiding her online. Likely sick of the drama she always pretended wasn't her fault. The wedding was the perfect stage. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't about screaming or breaking things. It's not about confrontation. It's about making the truth impossible to ignore. I showed up with a friend, Danielle, a colleague from my new firm who had a mean poker face and a gold dress that made everyone turn their head when she walked in. We weren't dating, but she was sharp, funny, and totally on board when I told her. Just act like we're the most unbothered people in the world. She grinned. I'm excellent at ruining someone's ego with silence. The ceremony was beautiful, emotional, everything Rebecca deserved. I watched my parents from a few rows up, smiling as they held hands, my dad even dabbing his eyes with a napkin. It made me think of that fishing boat he once had to sell, and how far we'd all come since that moment. The reception was where it happened. Dinner, dancing, speeches, and then, somewhere between the second round of drinks and the start of the music, I made my final move. There was a moment in the evening, small, casual, when guests were invited to walk up to a screen near the bar and submit photos to a live slideshow projected above the dance floor. It was meant to be cute, fun, memories from everyone's lives. Photos from childhood, funny selfies, travel pictures. What no one expected, what Emily certainly didn't expect, was for a photo to pop up showing Brent in a meeting room, shaking hands with a client, with a caption at the bottom that read, "Fake consulting gig, 2 weeks before being exposed for financial fraud." People laughed at first, thought it was a joke, until the next photo popped up, a screenshot of one of Brent's deleted posts bragging about a six-figure investment, followed by a bank document with sensitive details blurred out, but the dates in Brent's name were perfectly visible. And then a third slide, a screen grab of the podcast episode title, "The Rise of Financial Fakes." People started whispering. Some guests turned to look around the room. Brent, who had been sipping from a whiskey glass and chatting up someone near the buffet, froze. Emily, seated beside him, turned white. I stood near the edge of the dance floor, drink in hand, not smiling, not speaking, just watching. The slideshow continued, random pictures from other guests, until someone turned it off. But the damage had already been done. People saw. They asked questions. Loudly. And that's when the whispers started turning into something else. Judgment. Laughter. Pity. All directed at the one couple who had spent the last year trying to claw their way to the top of a house made of lies. Emily got up first. Tried to act like she needed some air. Brent followed, nearly knocking over a centerpiece in his rush to escape. They didn't come back. I didn't need to say a word. The fallout took care of itself. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer. Apparently, Emily had tried to quietly settle the credit card issue, offering to pay back the money if I signed a non-disclosure agreement. My response: no deal. We took it to court. It didn't make headlines, but it did make waves within the family. The court found Brent liable for fraudulent charges. He was ordered to pay back the full amount, plus damages, and the ruling became a matter of public record. That part was important, because now, no more whispered rumors. No more he said, she said. Just the truth. In ink. My parents, they took a little longer to come around. They didn't like conflict. Never had. But after seeing what Emily tried to do, how far she went to tear us apart, they began to understand. We had a long talk one night by the lake. My mom cried. My dad didn't. He just said, "You did what we couldn't. You stood up." And that meant everything. Emily and Brent, they lost more than just money. They lost credibility. Respect. The fragile image they'd curated for years crumbled. Brent's entrepreneurship circle cut him off. Emily's social clout disintegrated. People stopped inviting them to things. Family stopped responding to their texts. Even their Christmas cards were returned unopened. They moved eventually. Quietly. Rumors said it was out of state. No one really knows. Or cares. As for me, I rebuilt my reputation the same way I'd built everything else, from the ground up. Quietly. Carefully. Honestly. My new firm took off. I hired smart, hungry people who had been burned by the same kind of fakes that Brent used to pretend to be. We did good work. Fair work. I started getting invited to speak at events again. Even did a podcast interview of my own, talking about integrity in business and what it means to protect your name when it matters most. I never mentioned Emily by name. I didn't have to. People knew. And in the end, that was enough. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because she needed to lose, really lose, before she could ever understand what she'd tried to destroy. Family isn't something you manipulate. Respect isn't something you demand. And love? Love doesn't look like control. It looks like buying your parents a lake house so they can finally rest. It looks like standing alone when no one believes you. It looks like letting go of the need to be angry once justice has spoken. So now, I sit on the same porch where it all began. My dad's fishing again. My mom's knitting on the swing. The sun sets slow and golden across the water. And for the first time in a long time, there's peace. No more games. No more lies. Just the sound of cicadas, the creak of rocking chairs, and the satisfaction of knowing. They tried to take everything, and I gave them nothing, not even my silence.